Some choices don't echo, they rewrite who you are. The storm had already passed, but the air still tasted like metal and cold static as Ethan Cole stepped over the shattered hull, his boots crunching against frozen debris that glittered like broken glass under a pale, distant sun. His suit's thermal gauge blinked 12 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping, warning him that he had maybe 40 minutes before the cold started taking things he couldn't get back. But he kept moving anyway, because that was what he did. Salvage, survive, repeat. The wreck stretched across nearly half a mile, a graveyard of something far more advanced than anything Earth had built, its curved alloys still humming faintly, like they refused to accept they were dead. Ethan exhaled slowly, breath fogging inside his cracked visor as his scanner flickered. One signal, weak, inconsistent, but not gone. He froze, listening past the wind, past the distant creak of cooling metal, until he heard it, a faint rhythm. Too precise to be mechanical, too steady to be random, a heartbeat. No way, he muttered, adjusting his path toward a collapsed section of the hull where the signal pulsed strongest, his gloved hands pushing aside warped plating still warm to the touch. The heat didn't belong here, not on a world that froze oceans solid in hours. Something inside was fighting to stay alive. He found her beneath a fractured support beam, half buried in silver dust, her skin glowing faintly, blue, but not like anything he'd ever seen. More like light trapped under glass. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, like even unconscious she refused to lose control. Ethan hesitated, just for a second, because nothing about this made sense. Alien tech, alien body, alien war, and him, just a guy with a failing heater and a bad habit of getting involved. His scanner chirped again, weaker this time. That decided it. He dropped to one knee, hands moving before his brain could catch up, pulling his last med kit from his pack, the seal cracking open with a soft hiss that sounded too loud in the silence. "Don't die on me," he said under his breath, not even sure why he cared, pressing a thermal patch against the glowing wound along her side as the fabric of her suit shifted like liquid around his touch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyes snapped open, gold, sharp, focused, and very, very aware. Ethan froze, hands still pressed against her, as something like recognition or calculation flickered behind her gaze. She didn't flinch, didn't panic. She studied him, like he was the strange one. "Human," she whispered, her voice low, steady despite the weakness threading through it. "Why?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the question, by the way she said it like it mattered more than survival. He let out a short breath, shaking his head as he adjusted the patch, tightening the seal. "Because you're still breathing," he said simply. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in confusion, like the answer didn't fit any logic she understood. The wind picked up outside, rattling the broken hull, and somewhere far above, something moved, silent, massive, watching. Ethan didn't see it yet. She did, and for the first time since she opened her eyes, something like fear slipped through her control. "You shouldn't have stayed," she said, quieter now, almost regretful. The wind shifted first, a low hum threading through the broken hull, and Ethan felt it in his bones before his instruments caught up. A pressure change, subtle but wrong, like the sky itself had started paying attention. His suit display flickered, scrambling for a signal lock as he glanced upward through the fractured ceiling where pale light bled in, and for a split second he thought he saw movement, something vast crossing between him and the clouds. What was that? He asked, more to himself than to her. But the way her eyes tracked the sky told him she knew. Lyra's fingers tightened weakly against the plating beneath her, not in panic, but in calculation, like she was counting seconds he could not see. "They are early," she said, her voice steadier now, though her breathing remained controlled and shallow. Each inhale measured like it cost her something. Ethan frowned, adjusting the thermal wrap around her side, the material responding to her strange physiology by glowing faintly brighter, adapting in ways his equipment should not have been capable of. "Who is early?" he pressed, but she did not answer right away, her gaze fixed above, listening to something far beyond human range. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant crackle of cooling metal and the soft pulse of her heartbeat echoing through his scanner. Then she looked at him again, And this time there was no confusion in her eyes, only a quiet certainty that made his chest tighten. "The ones who do not forgive failure," she said. Ethan let out a slow breath, shaking his head as he reached for his pack, checking what little he had left: one ration bar, half a canteen, a flare that might not even ignite in this atmosphere. "Good thing I am not on their list," he muttered, though even as he said it, he knew that was not how this worked. He had found her, touched her, changed something. That was enough. The hull groaned above them, a deep resonance that did not belong to wind or settling metal. And this time his instruments caught it, a spike across every channel, electromagnetic interference rising fast. "We need to move," he said, already shifting his weight, sliding one arm carefully beneath her shoulders as his suit compensated for the extra load with a soft mechanical whine. For a moment, she resisted, not physically, but with a look, something sharp and searching, like she was trying to understand why he was still here. "You do not survive this," she said quietly. Ethan met her gaze, steady, not defiant, just honest. "Then I guess I am already doing something new," he replied. That seemed to land somewhere deeper than his earlier answer, because the tension in her expression faltered, just for a second, like a crack in something ancient. The hum above them deepened, turning into a distant, synchronized rhythm that made the air vibrate. And then the light changed, shadows stretching unnaturally across the wreckage as something massive passed overhead. Ethan did not look up this time. He did not need to, because every instinct he had was already screaming that whatever was coming was not meant to be outrun. He tightened his grip on her anyway, pushing forward through the narrow gap in the hull, boots slipping on frost as he headed for a ridge he had marked earlier, the only cover for at least 300 yards. Behind him, the wreck began to respond, panels shifting, systems waking for reasons he could not explain, as if the ship itself recognized what was approaching. Lyra's voice came softer now, closer to his ear, not commanding, not distant, but almost careful. "Human," she said, and for the first time, the word did not sound like a classification, but something else entirely. "If they find you with me, they will not see you as separate." Ethan did not slow down, did not look back. "Then they better get used to the idea," he said, breath steady despite the cold biting deeper into his lungs, and somewhere above them, unseen engines aligned, waiting. The ridge was closer than it looked, but every step felt heavier, the cold biting deeper through Ethan's suit as the air thickened with that same unnatural pressure. His display blinked erratically, numbers distorting, then stabilizing just long enough to confirm what his instincts already knew. Something massive had entered the atmosphere, and it was not hiding. The sky above shifted from pale gray to something darker, layered, like overlapping shadows moving against each other, and for the first time Ethan understood that whatever was up, there was not just one ship. He adjusted his grip on Lyra, feeling the faint warmth of her skin through the suit as her breathing grew steadier, not because she was recovering, but because she was preparing. "They are aligning," she said quietly, her voice carrying a calm that did not match the situation, and that calm unsettled him more than the storm ever could. "For what?" he asked, pushing forward as the ridge finally came into reach. A jagged rise of black stone that cut through the frozen terrain like a blade. He lowered her carefully behind it, crouching beside her as the wind dropped suddenly, replaced by a low, steady vibration that hummed through the ground itself. For a moment, everything went still. No wind, no shifting debris, just silence stretched so thin it felt like it might break. Then the light changed again, brighter this time, not from the sun, but from above. A diffuse glow that painted the world in soft, unnatural clarity. Ethan risked a glance upward, just a fraction, and what he saw made him forget the cold entirely. Shapes, enormous and precise, suspended in perfect formation, their surfaces reflecting light like polished stone, edges too clean to belong to anything natural. They did not descend, they did not fire, they simply waited. "That is not a rescue," he said under his breath. Lyra followed his gaze, her expression unreadable now, but her eyes held something heavier than fear, something closer to recognition. "No," she replied. "It is a decision." Ethan looked back at her, searching for anything that made sense, but all he found was the quiet certainty in her posture, the way she no longer tried to hide her strength, even in her weakened state. "You said they would not see me as separate," he said, his voice low, steady despite the weight pressing down from the sky. "So what do they see right now?" Lyra hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. And in that hesitation, Ethan felt the truth before she spoke it. "A variable," she said. The word hung between them. Simple, clinical, and somehow more dangerous than any threat. Ethan let out a slow breath, leaning back against the cold stone as his suit struggled to maintain temperature, the battery warning flashing in the corner of his vision. "I have never liked being unpredictable," he said quietly. Lyra turned her head toward him, studying him again. But this time, there was no distance in her gaze, no sense of him being lesser or irrelevant. "Your kind built its survival on unpredictability," she said, almost as if she was reminding herself. The vibration in the ground intensified, a synchronized pulse now, and from above, a narrow column of light began to form, not striking, not attacking, but focusing, narrowing as if searching for something. Ethan felt it pass over the wreckage behind them, then shift, sweeping slowly across the terrain. "They are scanning," he murmured. Lyra did not deny it. Instead, she reached out, her hand hovering just above his arm before finally making contact, her touch light but deliberate. "If they find me," she said, her voice softer now, "they will expect obedience." Ethan glanced at her hand, then back at her face, something unspoken passing between them, something neither of them fully understood yet. "And if they do not get it?" he asked. Lyra's gaze lifted once more to the sky, where the light continued its slow, inevitable search. "Then they will learn something they have forgotten," she said, and for the first time since he found her, there was a trace of something new in her voice. Not fear, not command, but something dangerously close to hope. The light slowed as it reached the ridge, narrowing into a precise beam that hovered just above the frozen ground, not touching, not burning, only observing, and Ethan felt his breath catch as his suit display flatlined for a second before rebooting with a sharp flicker. Whatever that scan was, it did not belong to anything he understood, and for the first time since the crash, he felt small in a way the cold could not explain. Beside him, Lyra did not move, her posture steady despite the strain still visible in the tightness of her shoulders, her hand resting lightly on his arm as if grounding herself to something real. The beam shifted, inching closer, its glow reflecting in her eyes, turning the gold into something almost molten. "It is narrowing the field," she said softly, more to herself than to him, her voice carrying that same calm certainty, but now threaded with something else, anticipation. Ethan swallowed, glancing at the terrain around them, the ridge offering cover. But not invisibility, not against something like that. "Can it see through this?" he asked, tapping the stone lightly. Lyra followed the motion, then looked back at the light. "It does not need to," she answered. The ground vibrated again, deeper this time, like a heartbeat that did not belong to anything alive, and the beam paused, hovering just 10 yards away, its edges sharpening as if focusing. Ethan felt the cold creep further into his suit, the battery warning blinking again, more urgent. Now, and he knew time was slipping, not just for him, but for whatever choice they were standing inside. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between Lyra and the approaching light. Without thinking, a small movement, instinctive, but she noticed, her eyes flicked to him, something unreadable passing through them, something that lingered a second longer than before. "You place yourself in front of a force you do not understand," she said, not questioning, not criticizing, simply stating it as fact. Ethan let out a quiet breath, his gaze fixed on the beam as it edged closer, now close enough that he could see faint patterns within it, shifting symbols or currents that made his vision blur if he stared too long. "I understand enough," he replied, voice steady despite the pressure building in the air. "It is looking for you." The beam moved again, faster this time, sliding across the ridge until it touched the edge of her position, the glow brushing against the stone and spilling over, illuminating her fully. For a moment, everything seemed to hold still, the vibration, the wind, even the cold, like the world itself was waiting. Lyra inhaled slowly, her posture straightening, The weakness in her body still there, but no longer defining her. "Then it has found me," she said. Ethan turned to her, something tightening in his chest, because the way she said it did not sound like defeat. It sounded like acceptance. "And now what?" he asked. The light intensified, not harsh, but absolute. And above them, the shapes in the sky shifted, aligning with a precision that felt deliberate, inevitable. Lyra's hand pressed more firmly against his arm, her touch warmer. "Now, stronger. Now," she said, her voice no longer quiet, no longer uncertain. "They decide if I am still theirs." The beam pulsed once, and Ethan felt it pass through him, not physical, but something deeper, like a question asked without words. His display went dark again, this time longer, and when it returned, it showed nothing but a single line of text he had never seen before, a language he did not know, yet somehow understood, subject linked. He blinked, breath catching as he looked at Lyra, then back at the sky. "I think they already made that decision," he said, and for the first time, the calm in her eyes broke, replaced by something far more dangerous than fear, something that looked a lot like defiance. The words on Ethan's display did not fade. They stayed there, steady and impossible, subject linked, and no matter how many times he blinked or tapped the side of his helmet, they did not change. He felt Lyra's grip tighten on his arm, not out of fear, but recognition, like she had seen something like this before, or worse, expected it. Above them, the formation shifted again, not moving closer, not retreating, just adjusting, as if recalculating around a new variable they had not planned for. The beam that had been fixed on her flickered once, then widened, expanding just enough to include him fully, bathing them both in that soft, absolute light. Ethan exhaled slowly, the sound loud in the silence, his breath fogging and then vanishing as the temperature dropped another degree. "That is new," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Lyra did not respond immediately, her gaze locked upward, her posture changing in subtle ways, shoulders squared, chin lifted, as if something deep inside her had aligned with what was happening. "They do not make errors," she said at last, her voice low but certain. "If you are linked, then you are no longer incidental." Ethan let out a short, almost humorless breath, shifting slightly to keep his balance as the ground vibrated again, stronger now, more insistent. "I was hoping to stay incidental," he replied. The beam pulsed, brighter this time, and for a brief moment, the world around them seemed to dissolve into layers of light and shadow, shapes and patterns overlapping in ways that made no sense to his eyes but somehow felt organized, intentional. When it settled, his display flickered again, the same unknown language scrolling across it. Faster now, lines forming and reforming before stabilizing into something simpler. Status. Unresolved. He stared at it, a strange weight settling in his chest, because he understood that word too clearly. Beside him, Lyra's expression shifted, the defiance still there, but now tempered with something sharper, something strategic. "They cannot classify you," she said, almost as if she was thinking out loud. "And they do not proceed without classification." Ethan glanced at her, then back at the sky, where the massive shapes remained perfectly still, waiting. "So what happens when they cannot decide?" he asked. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, her focus returning to him fully, and for the first time, there was no distance left in her gaze, no sense of hierarchy or separation, just two beings caught in the same moment. "Then they observe," she said, "until something forces a conclusion." The ground beneath them pulsed again, synchronized with the light. And in the distance, the wreck behind them began to respond, faint glows igniting along its fractured surface, systems waking that should have remained silent. Ethan followed the glow with his eyes, a thought forming slowly, uncertain but persistent. "It is reacting to you," he said. Lyra did not deny it. Instead, she shifted slightly, her hand leaving his arm only to press against the cold stone beside them, her fingers splaying as if she could feel the planet itself through it. "Not just to me," she corrected, her voice quieter now, more deliberate. "To us." The word hung between them, heavier than anything that had come before, and Ethan felt it settle somewhere deep, somewhere he could not quite name. Above them, the beam narrowed again, focusing tighter, more precise. And this time it did not stop at the edge of the ridge. It moved directly onto them, centering, locking, and the vibration in the ground stilled completely. Silence followed, absolute and complete, as if the entire world had paused. Then, from somewhere beyond the light, a new signal formed. Not sound, not exactly, but something that pressed against his mind, structured, deliberate, waiting for recognition. Ethan's breath caught as his display went dark once more, then reignited with a single line, clearer than before. Input required. He stared at it, pulse steady but heavy, and without looking away from the sky, he spoke, his voice low but firm. I think they are waiting for an answer, and beside him, Lyra did not look surprised, only ready. The prompt on Ethan's display did not blink or fade. It waited, steady and patient, as if time itself had been placed on hold for a single decision, and he felt the weight of it settle deeper than the cold ever could. Input required. He swallowed slowly, his breath controlled, his mind racing through options that did not exist, because nothing in his life had prepared him for answering something that did not speak in words. Beside him, Lyra shifted slightly, her posture fully upright now despite the strain, her presence no longer diminished, but rising, as if the light itself was restoring something inside her. They are not asking a question you can hear, she said quietly, her voice measured, careful. They are asking a question you must choose. Ethan let out a slow breath, eyes still locked on the sky, where the massive forms remained perfectly still, waiting, not impatient, not aggressive, just certain that an answer would come. That is not how humans usually do things, he replied, a faint edge of dry humor cutting through the tension. Lyra's gaze flicked to him, and for a moment, something almost like curiosity softened her expression. That is why they cannot resolve you, she said. The ground beneath them remained still, the silence stretching longer now, heavier, until even the distant hum of the wreck had quieted, as if the entire world was listening. Ethan shifted his weight slightly, his suit struggling to maintain temperature, the warning now a steady pulse at the edge of his vision, but he ignored it, because none of that mattered compared to what was in front of him. If I answer wrong, he said slowly, choosing each word with care, what happens? Lyra did not look away this time, her eyes steady, unflinching. There is no wrong, she said, only outcomes. Ethan nodded once, a small motion, but it grounded him, brought him back to something simple, something human. Outcomes he understood, choices he understood. Even if the scale was different, the light above them shifted again, not moving closer, but tightening, focusing in a way that felt more immediate, more present, like the moment was narrowing toward a point. His display flickered once more, the same line holding steady, waiting, input required. He exhaled slowly, then spoke, not to the display, not to the sky, but simply because speaking made it real. All right, he said, voice low but firm. Then here is my answer. Lyra's hand moved again, this time not just resting against him, but gripping his sleeve, not to stop him, but to anchor herself as much as him. Ethan did not look at her, did not look away from the light. He just said it. She stays. The words hung in the air, simple, direct, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the light reacted, not brighter, not harsher, but different, the patterns within it shifting rapidly, reorganizing in ways his eyes could not follow. And the sky above responded in perfect synchronization, the massive shapes adjusting their formation with a precision that felt like acknowledgement. His display went dark again, longer this time, and when it returned, the text had changed. Response received, status updating. Ethan felt his pulse steady, not because the danger was gone, but because something had moved. Something had answered back. Beside him, Lyra's grip tightened slightly, and when he finally glanced at her, he saw it clearly now, not just defiance, not just strength, but something deeper, something that had not been there before. Trust. You chose, she said softly, and there was no distance in her voice anymore, no hierarchy, no separation, just recognition. Ethan gave a small nod, almost to himself. That is what we do, he replied. Above them, the formation began to change again, not withdrawing, not advancing, but opening, like something unseen was being revealed beyond it. and the light surrounding them softened, no longer searching, no longer questioning, but holding. And in that stillness, Lyra looked up at the sky, then back at him, her voice quieter than before, but carrying more weight than anything she had said yet. "Then they will answer too," she said. The light did not vanish when his answer settled. It changed, softening around them like it had accepted something it could not fully explain, and for the first time since the sky had darkened, the pressure in the air eased just enough for Ethan to take a full breath without feeling like the world was pressing back. His display stabilized, the warning icon still there but quieter now, pushed aside by a new line that formed slowly, deliberately, as if it wanted to be understood. Status. Conditional acceptance. Ethan exhaled through his teeth, a faint, almost disbelieving sound escaping him as he glanced up at the massive shapes above, their formation no longer rigid, no longer closed, but opening in subtle arcs that revealed something deeper behind them, something brighter, more distant. Beside him, Lyra shifted forward, no longer leaning on him for support, her posture fully aligned now, her presence filling the space in a way that made the cold feel smaller. "They have acknowledged your claim," she said, her voice calm but carrying a new weight, something closer to authority than before. Ethan let out a short breath, rubbing a gloved hand along the edge of his helmet as he processed that. "That did not feel like a claim," he said quietly. "That felt like a promise." Lyra's gaze moved to him, and this time there was no hesitation, no distance, only recognition. "To them, there is no difference," she replied. The light above pulsed again, not searching now, but communicating, patterns shifting in slower, more deliberate sequences, and from somewhere within that structure, something descended, not falling, not rushing, but lowering with precise control. A platform, or something like it, formed from the light itself, its edges clean and exact, stopping just a few feet above the ground in front of them. Ethan watched it in silence, every instinct telling him this was the moment where everything changed, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet certainty of a door opening that could not be closed again. "That is new," he said under his breath. Lyra stepped forward slightly, her movement steady, unhurried, as if she had always known this would come. "It is an invitation," she said. Ethan glanced at her, then at the platform, then back at the sky, where the massive forms remained still, watching, not forcing, not demanding, simply waiting. "For you," he said. Lyra shook her head once, a small motion, but firm. "For us," she corrected. The words settled between them, heavier now, more real than before. Ethan felt it, the shift in everything, the way the moment was no longer about survival, but about direction, about what came next. His suit chimed softly again, the temperature dropping further, the battery nearing its limit, a quiet reminder that whatever choice this was, it was not happening in a vacuum. He stepped closer to the platform, boots crunching softly against the frost, stopping just short of it as he looked down at its surface, smooth, reflective, almost like liquid held in shape. "And if we do not take it?" he asked. Lyra's gaze remained on the light, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softer, not weaker, just more human than before. "Then they will continue observing," she said, "until the outcome changes." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding that answer more than he wanted to. He glanced back at the wreck behind them, at the frozen landscape stretching out in every direction, at the small, fragile world he knew how to survive in, and then back at the platform that represented something entirely different. "You said, they do not proceed without classification," he said quietly. Lyra turned to him fully now, her eyes steady, clear, no longer guarded. "You forced them to adapt," she said. Ethan let out a quiet breath, something almost like a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "That was not the plan," he murmured. Lyra's expression shifted again, just slightly, something warmer, something that did not belong to empires or fleets. "No," she said, "that was humanity." The light pulsed once more, the platform responding with a faint glow, as if reminding them that time, while paused, was not endless. Ethan looked at her one last time, really looked, not as something alien, not as something distant, but as someone standing in the same moment as him. "All right," he said, voice steady despite everything. Then we find out what comes after, and without waiting for the sky to decide again, he stepped forward. The surface felt solid the moment Ethan's boot touched it, but not cold, not like the frozen ground he had just left. It held a quiet warmth, subtle and controlled, like it recognized the difference between weight and intent. He shifted his balance instinctively, testing it, and the platform responded with a faint ripple of light beneath his feet, not moving, not reacting in panic, just acknowledging. Behind him, the wind returned for a second, brushing across the ridge, carrying the distant scent of metal and ice. But it no longer reached him the same way, like he had stepped just outside the reach of that world. He turned slightly, glancing back, and saw Lyra still standing at the edge, her gaze fixed on him, not uncertain, not hesitant, but measuring something deeper than distance. "You do not step lightly into unknown systems," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the space between them. Ethan let out a slow breath, one corner of his mouth tightening just slightly. "I have never had that option," he replied. The platform brightened faintly under his feet, as if responding to the exchange, and then something shifted above them. Not movement, not sound, but a change in presence, like attention narrowing to a point. Lyra stepped forward then, closing the distance with controlled precision, her movements no longer carrying the weight of injury, but the quiet strength of someone reclaiming something that had never truly been taken. When her foot touched the platform, the light surged softly, not blinding, not overwhelming, just complete. Ethan felt it pass through him again, deeper this time, not asking, not scanning, but confirming. His display flickered once more, then stabilized, the previous warnings fading into the background as a new line formed, slower, deliberate, status, synchronized. He stared at it for a moment, then glanced at Lyra. "That sounds permanent," he said quietly. Lyra did not look at the display. She did not need to. Her gaze remained on the horizon, on the vast shapes above them that had begun to open further, revealing a space beyond that was no longer hidden. "It means they no longer separate the outcome," she said. Ethan let that settle, the meaning threading through him in ways he could not fully articulate, but could feel, heavy and undeniable. The platform beneath them shifted then, not rising yet, but preparing, a subtle hum building beneath the surface, steady and controlled. He adjusted his stance without thinking, his body aligning with the motion, the same way he would on any unstable ground. But this was not instability. This was intention, last chance to stay, he said, glancing at her, not as a warning, but as an acknowledgement. Lyra finally turned her head toward him, and in her eyes there was no empire, no fleet, no distance between species or power, only clarity. "I have never stayed," she replied. The hum deepened, and this time the platform moved, lifting smoothly, without resistance, without force, just a controlled ascent that carried them away from the ridge, from the wreck, from the frozen landscape that had defined the last moments of his life. Ethan looked down as the ground receded, the broken hull shrinking into the distance, the ridge becoming just another line in the terrain, and for a brief second, he felt the weight of leaving it behind. Then he looked up. The opening in the formation was clearer now, a path carved through something far larger than ships, something structured, deliberate, and waiting. The light around them shifted again, wrapping closer, not confining, but guiding. "They are not taking us," Ethan said slowly, the realization forming as he watched the path align ahead of them. Lyra's voice came softer now, but stronger than ever. "No," she said. "They are following the decision you made." Ethan let out a quiet breath, eyes fixed forward as the platform carried them higher, closer to the threshold that separated everything he had known from everything he did not. "Then I hope they are ready for that," he murmured, and beside him, Lyra did not look at the fleet, did not look at the path. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was no question left in her expression, only certainty. The ascent slowed just before the threshold, not stopping, not hesitating, but easing into something larger than motion, and Ethan felt it in the way the air, or whatever replaced it, shifted around them, thinner but clearer, like stepping into a space where everything unnecessary had been stripped away. The platform carried them through the opening without resistance, passing between structures so vast they no longer felt like ships, but like architecture, deliberate and ancient, their surfaces alive with faint patterns that pulsed in quiet synchronization. Ethan did not speak, not because he had nothing to say, but because the moment did not need words, it needed attention. Beside him, Lyra stood still, her posture aligned with the space around them, not as someone returning home, but as someone stepping into something that had changed. The light that surrounded them softened again, settling into a steady glow that no longer searched or questioned, only held. His display flickered once more, then stabilized completely. The warnings gone now, replaced by a single, steady line that did not change. Status accepted. Ethan let out a slow breath, the tension in his chest easing just enough for him to feel it. And for a moment, he closed his eyes, grounding himself in something simple, something human. When he opened them again, the view had shifted. Beyond the structures, beyond the layered forms of the fleet, there was something else, something vast and distant, a field of light that stretched farther than he could measure. Not stars, not exactly, but something organized, connected, alive in a way he could not define. That is not space, he said quietly. Lyra followed his gaze, her expression calm, but there was something in her eyes now, something deeper than recognition. No, she said softly. It is what comes after it. The platform came to a stop then, not with a jolt, not with any sense of arrival, but with a quiet finality, like a decision completed. The light around them receded just enough to reveal the surface beneath their feet, no longer reflective, but solid, real, part of something greater. Ethan shifted slightly, feeling the difference immediately. The ground here was not cold, not harsh. It held a steady warmth that felt intentional. He looked around, taking in the scale, the silence, the presence of something that did not need to announce itself to be understood. So this is where they decide everything, he said. Lyra turned to him then, fully, and for the first time since he had found her, there was no weight of expectation in her expression, no burden of rank or destiny, only clarity. No, she said, her voice steady, certain. This is where they listen. Ethan frowned slightly, the distinction settling in slowly, and as it did, he realized something that shifted the entire moment. They had not been brought here to be judged. They had been brought here because of what he had already done. The silence around them deepened, not empty, but attentive, like something vast was waiting, not for orders, not for commands, but for understanding. He glanced at Lyra, then back, at the horizon of light, and for the first time since the sky had changed, he felt something unexpected settle in his chest. Not fear, not uncertainty, but something steadier. I am not a leader, he said quietly. Lyra's expression softened, just slightly, the smallest shift, but it carried more meaning than anything she had said before. That is why this works, she replied. Ethan let out a quiet breath. The kind that came after a long moment finally found its place.